Hey everyone, this is Tyler Christofoli from Spec with another brief video, and I want to talk a little bit about on-scene time. I was reviewing some of my reports, trying to figure out what I can do better, and one of the things that popped out to me was that I've been spending way too much time on scene. They say the average time we should be spending on scene is, anywhere from 15, 20 minutes, 20 minutes at max. And apparently I've been spending approximately 35 to 40 minutes on scene. I have the habit of trying to diagnose my patients before I even get them to the hospital. And I'd like to have a very good idea of what's going on with them, which isn't an issue, and you can still do it, but I just need to organize my calls a little bit more. And so what I did is I created a couple benchmarks that I want to try to reach, and I separated my call into 3 5-minute segments. And I'm going to show you these 3 5-minute segments, and this is what I'm trying to do to decrease my on-scene time. So what I did is I separate my call into 3 5-minute segments. Starting when I arrive on scene, make patient contact, my initial assessment and vitals. I try to do those all within the first 5 minutes, which is not hard. If you set that goal, it's very easy to meet that goal and get your first set of vitals, within the first 5 minutes. Now, obviously, things are going to change. This is for your routine medical call. This isn't a P&Bs or, a car accident with difficult extrication. This is your bread and butter. Our calls that we go on all the time, chest pain, maybe some shortness of breath. These are the calls, a generalized weakness. It's the calls that we run all the time that we can set these certain benchmarks for. Now, within the second area, the 10-minute mark, I like to have an EKG done, my IV in, and the patient packaged and ready to go. Now, this second part is controversial because I know a lot of people like to start their IVs, and it's not a bad idea to start that IV while you're en route to the hospital. Start it on the run. Only problem I have with that is if you need to do any interventions as far as, giving nitro or any pain meds that we may need to give, we need to have that IV in before we start to think about that. So I like to have that IV in as soon as possible, and it doesn't take that long to put the IV in, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I like to have my EKG ran. I like to have my EKG, depending on the situation, before I even get the patient on the cot. If they're having chest pain, I like to run my EKG right there while they're in bed. And that way I can get a good look before I start moving them around. They're in a comfortable position, they're relaxed, and I can get a really good look at what's going on at that time in their own setting before I, lift them up and startle them and move them over to our cot. So once I get them packaged, by my 10-minute mark, then I start my 15-minute mark. And this last 5 minutes is when I want to reassess my vitals. I want to start thinking about my report to the hospital and continue my ongoing assessment. And obviously interventions are going to fall in here as well, giving oxygen if needed. These are just a couple benchmarks that I picked out for myself that I'm going to try to meet to try to decrease this on-scene time and give myself a little goal when I'm on a call to try to reach these markers. Now, there are some factors that delay our on-scene time that we really cannot do nothing about. One, a difficult extrication. If we have a car accident or we have a person who's a hoarder or maybe a obese patient that we have a very hard time removing from the scene and putting in the back of our ambulance, this is going to take a while, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's not worth beating ourselves up over it. There are going to be calls that are delayed because of on-scene factors. The other is a P&B. If a patient's pulseless and not breathing, we're going to be on scene. I don't know how the rest of you guys work, but our P&Bs, we work on scene and we don't transport unless we get a pulse back. It's obviously situational, and each situation is different, but the majority of our P&Bs we will work on scene because we have all of our ACLS right there. Difficult patients. If we have a patient who is a psych patient or maybe law enforcement is involved, these patients are going to take longer. Equipment failure. If our ambulance breaks down, we're having cot problems, that's going to take long as well. And lazy staff. We know we've all had the nursing home where we get there, we called for chest pain, and they don't have anything ready. The patient's not ready to go. Nobody can give us a report. So these are some factors that are going to delay our on-scene time, and there's not a thing we can do about it. The number one delay in my personal on-scene time is IV starts. And I know this because I have this fear of bringing a patient into the ER without an IV. Like I'm gonna get spanked or something when I bring them into the door. And I think a lot of other people have that same fear where we feel like no matter what, we need to get this IV in, even if the patient doesn't necessarily need the IV. If they had shortness of breath or they had something, we feel like, okay, we got to get this IV in. With chest pain, we got to get this IV in. And it is a good idea to get the IV, but I think I spend way too much time trying to start the IV in fear of what the ER is going to say, more so maybe than what I feel is best in the patient's best interest. So normally we only need to give ourselves 2 attempts to start the IV. That's my goal. I let my partner start one. If he doesn't get it, then I will try. If I don't get it, then if the patient really needs it, obviously we got an IO we can give. Otherwise, let's get them to the hospital. They got great tools there to start on difficult patients for starting IVs. I picked 3 common areas to look first on a patient. So first I'm going to look at in the intern vein, which is that vein that runs right along the medial side of your thumb down the wrist. Normally that's a very good area. I can see a vein that'll pop up in there. I'll look in the hand, and then I'll look in the AC. There's no shame in going in the AC. If you got a big honking AC and you can hit it, go ahead and hit it. Get that IV in. They have a whole nother AC in the other arm that they can start an IV in if they need it. But get that IV in as soon as possible. Don't waste any time. And if your 2 attempts are over and you don't have the IV, don't sweat it. It's going to happen. And sometimes we have patients who are very hard sticks, and that's just the way that our field goes. Sometimes there's not a thing we can do about it. So, lastly, I just want to say that some calls will take longer. And that's okay. It's fine if we have to maybe hold the patient's hand, or they're scared and we need to take more time. This isn't all about a big rush. This isn't a big rush to get them in and get them back so we can run the next call. The main point of trying to reduce our on-scene time is to become more organized with our pre-hospital care. So remember, the patient care always comes first, no matter what. They're not just a number that we're on to the next one. We are going to take our time. But if we come at this with an organized approach, I think that we're going to find we set up our pre-hospital care a lot more organized, and that's going to help us better take care of our patients in the future and make us better EMTs and paramedics as well in the end. So I hope you guys are not taken back by anything that I said in this. This is my personal opinion. I'd like to hear your opinion on this matter as well. Leave some comments in the box below of maybe some ways that you were able to reduce your on-scene time, or any tips that you have for the rest of us. So you guys have a great night. Thanks for watching the video, and appreciate you guys supporting our mission with SPEC. Thank you.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.